Today I'm speaking with Charlie Janes. Charlie's been a bit of a hero of mine since I was a teenager when his first book, Hunting for Trouble, came out. And if I'm honest, he's also been on the top of my wish list for Kiwi Tales interviews since day one. So it was a real privilege to talk with him and spend a couple of days together. If you haven't heard of Charlie before, he's a legend in hunting and bush flying circles. He's written 5 books, all in his humorous storytelling manner, telling of his escapades and brushes with authority. He spent many years in the bush hunting, building airstrips, and more recently, simply enjoying nature. I'm sure you'll enjoy this interview as much as I did. Oh, thanks very much for talking with me. It's great to meet you, finally.
And likewise.
Thank you. In 1991, I was an engineering apprentice in New Zealand. As I said, I was avionics. And I loved the outdoors, and I did a bit of flying and did a bit of hunting. Nothing to your level, but I had a little Jodel. And your first book came out, I think, in 1990. And here's this guy who had a plane like mine and was a hunter, and you were my hero straight away. So.
Oh, how long did it take before the bubble burst?
Well, it didn't. So that was fantastic. And then I bought every book as they come out and read them and reread them. Even my wife has read them, and she's not even into hunting. So. And it was really good yesterday to have a look at your aeroplanes in the hangar. So I think you've had 4 aeroplanes and building a 5th. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you had an Auster with a gypsy engine.
Yeah.
And then there was a Jodel.
Yep.
Which you built yourself.
Yep. Great aeroplane.
Yeah. Would that be your favourite of all the aeroplanes?
So far, yeah. The only drawback with the Jodel was the low wing design.
Yeah.
Because when you're flying in the areas where you're landing in a tussock airstrip, didn't have enough roof clearance underneath the wing.
Mm. Was that a bit limiting for some of the places you went?
Only after I went down the west coast for a nosy. I went down there and thought, oh man, all this country and I can't land in it.
So you came back and
bought another Auster.
And then put the Rover in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But was it pretty nice to fly, the Jodel?
Oh, beautiful. You could put your finger on the top of the stick and bank it or alter the trim. You know, really, really good aeroplane.
And then you built a Protech.
Mm-hmm.
Was the building the aeroplanes part of the enjoyment for you?
Yeah, to some extent it was, because it's a bit of a challenge when you see what the designer of the kit, because it was a welded fuselage kit.
Right.
When you see what he's done, you think, oh, what the heck did he do that for? So you walk up and down for a while, get the hacksaw out, cut that bit out and put another bit in.
And then you're currently building a Savannah.
Yeah.
Which we saw yesterday, which is sort of half built, would it be? Or
Well, it's all the major bits have been completed except for painting.
Right.
And that sort of thing.
Yeah, and the wings are done.
The wings are done, the tail feathers are done, rudder's done.
Mm. And
you take a step back and think, right, oh man, why did I do that? Fancy an aeroplane with 2 left wings.
Flying was obviously a passion of yours, but hunting was a passion as well?
Well, one led to the other. Mm. One was already established. I mean, hunting since I was a little kid.
Yeah. With
my dad.
Your dad was obviously a mad hunter.
Well, he was keen.
A keen hunter, yeah. Let's reword it that way.
And we built, of course Dad's gone now, but we're built totally different. I'm built like a tapeworm, and he's built like the dog that carts around.
Oh, right.
They're very solid.
Yeah.
Very strong.
So at what age did you start hunting with him? Very young, I suppose.
Well, yeah, pretty young. First kill was a rabbit at about 3 feet. Squat.
With an air rifle?
No, 22.
Oh, yeah. And what about your first real animal, like a deer or a pig?
That was the first deer was skyline, one of 18 deer falling across his face. As went over the top, the last one stopped and looked back to say, yeah, yeah, yeah. Boom, got him.
Was that the story you told in the book when your dad took you spotlighting and you were actually poaching?
Yeah, well, I don't know, can't remember whether the spotlighting was certainly the wrong place at the right time.
But he was trying to get you your first deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the accommodation we enjoyed was marvellous. It was a river flat.
Yeah.
It had moss on it, but the moss died off because it was too cold at night.
Right.
So we just chucked a sleeping bag on the icy terrain, and that was it.
And was that you and your dad, or a brother as well? Or?
No, Dad and I and his cobber.
Right.
Who had an old 303 with no front side. What the heck he was going to do with that, I've got no idea.
Just wave it in the general direction.
Yeah. Well, when we woke up on the first morning, because we travelled at night to avoid detection, I didn't know all this until later. But the 18 deer filing out of some bush across a grassy face to go over the top of the ridge into the next patch of bush. And they stopped, looked back, and the last one to look back took a very quick aim at it. Quite steep, about 150 metres, I suppose, but very steep. So squeezed off around it, collapsed. Couldn't believe it. And you'll never guess where I hit it. It was looking at me, and that's where I had to recreate the whole business to figure out where the bullet wound should be.
Yeah.
It was standing on the top of this ridge, looking down like that at me, and I got it just between the eyes, the centre of the forehead.
Wow.
And I didn't know. It just
your dad thought you were going to be this legend from now on.
Yeah,
probably.
Well, I did too.
So your home was in the Hutt Valley, and I think you said you used to go biking when you got a wee bit older. You would bike to go hunting.
Yeah. And I can remember coming back from my first successful hunt after about 10 unsuccessful hunts. Old push bike, young driver, and a massive great boar, the back end of a massive great boar hanging off the handlebars.
How did you feel?
Well, all the Sheilas from school who had my age, they wouldn't even look at me normally because I was just a gangly youth.
Yeah.
But suddenly I was 12 feet tall. Look what I've got.
I think you said in your book about that, I'd cracked it. I was a hunter. I was tough with a capital T.
Yeah. Had a lot to learn.
Yeah. But pretty cool feeling.
Oh, yeah. Success at last.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's a ridge I used to call Towany Ridge. I used to climb up to an area on the edge of the bush to wander around. And it was the first, about the 11th trip up to the top of this ridge, when I saw this great big black mountain moving dirt. I was almost scared to fire at it because he's looking just down the slope 40 feet away. It was me. And looking over the top of this mound of freshly disturbed dirt was this monstrous big boar. You could always smell the maleness of it.
Yeah.
I was almost scared to pull the trigger.
I bet you were. I bet your heart was going a million miles an hour.
Yeah.
It's a great first kill.
It was certainly a big one.
Yeah. Something about your writing style in your books, I think, is universally appealing to a lot of people. I think it's something about the down-to-earth humour in them. We all like the anti-PC, the anti-bureaucracy, because that's how most of us feel. A lot of aviation stories, and also the hard slogging. You're out there in the middle of the night, in the rain and the snow, and most of us are a bit softer than that. But like I say, even my wife loved reading them. Do you remember the first time you thought you would write a book? How did that come about?
I first met Ros at a whale stranding, believe it or not. And she had said to me one day, I wrote a little thingy about whatever in the bush. She said, "Oh, that's not too bad. Write a chapter for us." So I wrote a wee bit, and unbeknown to me, she sent it to a publisher. And about a week later, get a letter back from the publisher, said, "Keep going, we'll take it."
Wow.
I wasn't that interested, really. It was just a sort of a sideline interest.
Yeah. And 5 books later, did it change your life? Because everyone I know knows your name, and it's all because of the books you wrote and the stories you told. Did it change your life a lot after the publicity you gained?
Not a great deal, because when people started talking about books that I'd written, I'd try and avoid the issue, because you get a bit embarrassed. I remember saying that some cabinet minister was a custard-brain jerk, because some of them are, Anyway, Ros insisted that I delete it. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. She said, "But you're insulting this guy." And I said, "He's insulting me by being here,
Mm-hmm. In the first book, you talk a little bit about, this was before you got into flying, about trying to find a better way to get to the hunting spots.
Yeah.
And you tell some really funny stories about, I think, a gyrocopter and jet boating and horses.
They all ended up in disaster.
Were they all true stories?
Oh, yeah. The horses were better because you don't just switch them off.
Yeah.
They've got to be, fed and a bit of vet care.
Yeah.
I did not do any shoeing, but I did trim the hooves.
Right.
A poorly shod horse is a liability.
Mm. But that didn't end up too well. They all got stolen.
Yeah, that was Baldy. He belonged to Forest Ranger based at Kuripāpango on the Ngaruroro River. And all I knew about it was a young fella, an apprentice, at the local garage, said, "Oh, saw one of your horses getting loaded on the truck. I thought you liked those horses." And I just about went through the ceiling, and I tracked down where they'd gone, which was obviously north, to a pet food factory.
Wow.
Man alive, that was a real goner, because Baldy was Park Clydie, big strong horse, and he'd been around. He could put anything on him. Yeah.
And did you save him?
I did. Mad trip all the way to Auckland in an old Land Rover, short wheelbase, canvas top, towing a horse load I borrowed from Doc, or from the Forest Service rather. And the old fellow was very reluctant to go on the horse float down here on the flats. But when he saw me up in the yard at just short of Auckland, there's a big circular fence full of and behind it was all the horses that people didn't want anymore. Little ponies, little wee ponies.
Wow.
Kids' horses,
Wow.
Some horses were old, and there in the middle of it all was Baldy.
I suppose you thought you were too late and he was gone.
Yeah, I did. And I was ready to commit hattie or whatever it is that you do to these guys. I was going to kill them if they'd hurt my horse. But I called out his name, and this great big, was a part draft horse, Park Clydesdale, great big head comes up out of the crowd, looks around, and he come over like a rocket.
Wow, amazing. And you took him home?
I took him home. And the guy that was managing the place said to me, "Oh, he's only an old Brumby, what's wrong with you?" And I said, "He's my if there's a hair of his head missing, your head will be missing." Guy was twice my size, but I was really pissed off.
Yeah. And the gyrocopter, was that a bit scary?
Oh, yeah, well, the gimbal head on the early gyros was mounted at the end of a stick, as most of them are. But when you move the stick forward, the thing was pivoted forward of it then had a fulcrum place. And if you wanted to go up, you pulled the stick back normally. But on the gyrocopter, on the early ones, you wanted to go up, you push the thing forward. Man alive, I got into trouble over that.
I bet you did.
Yeah, first journey was down the main runway at Napier before the tower arrived. Signalled my driver driving the Land Rover to get cracking, and away we went. And the thing went up like a lift. Really good performer. But high up, someone got probably a gust of wind from the side, and it started to move to the left. So I moved the stick to the right.
Mm.
Remember that backwards bit?
Mm.
The minute I moved the stick to the right, we plummeted to the left. And I suddenly realised that tarmac down was hard enough to hold an aeroplane, and certainly hard enough to hold me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the end of that idea.
Yeah.
Mm.
I flew it behind the Land Rover. Once I figured out what was happening, everything you wanted to do, you had to do backwards. But I landed it, and my mate in the Land Rover leapt up, and he said, "Man, that's fantastic! You did aerobatics already." And he said, "You weren't meaning to do aerobatics." I said, "Oh yeah, just one of those things. If you got it, you got it." But I quickly swapped places with him, and yeah, I got him to take the gyrocopter back to his place at Te Puhui, which is on the Taupo Road. Took it back there, and he had the same trouble. A wind gust moved him to the right, and the tip of one rotor blade hit the hill. And it had very large counterweights on the rotor blades, only a two-bladed rotor. But all the neighbours were out there, up in the little forestry village, all the kids were out there yahooing and hooting and sort of this chip, 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 as it was elevating. When it hit the hillside, one of the counterweights went across his house, about 100 metres away, and it made a sort of a yodeling noise, if you can call it that. It was still accelerating over the top of the Forestry Fire Brigade, across the footy field, and through the door of the footy field and recreation club.
Wow.
That was quite a long way.
That's scary, eh?
Yeah.
Mm.
Gee, it would have, anybody it hit, it would have killed them.
Yeah. So your first real introduction to flying was by a guy called Charlie Bishop.
Yeah.
He sounds like a bit of an interesting character.
He's an interesting character, right?
So you tell a funny story about him being kicked out of Australia.
Yeah.
And he was a pilot. So he took you flying in a Piper Cub in return for you taking him hunting.
That's right. But
you only managed to get a single goat. And I just want to read a bit that you wrote in your book because it's pretty funny. So you only got the single goat, and you said, strangely enough, my Aussie mate thought it was great fun. He didn't realise that chasing goats was only one step up from chasing possums, and chasing coons was only a gnat's whisker above worrying sheep, and dogs that worried sheep were history with a very loud bang.
Yeah.
But then it was Herb Maxwell that you met, and he suggested, well, why don't you buy an Auster?
I bought an Auster because it was there. It was the only aeroplane because a Piper Cub was far too expensive.
Right.
For a wage earner.
And your life was changed forever.
Forever, yeah.
Here's another thing you wrote about your life being changed. The stage was set for the future. Years of back-breaking toil to pay the bills to keep one of finally 4 aircraft shuttling in and out of the bush to recover venison. And so it went on. No money. Heaps of interesting moments, lots of hassles, and a few very narrow escapes from an aircraft-shaped hole in the ground, known in the vernacular as a smoky hole special. I've seen many, many kilometres of New Zealand backcountry, met a lot of interesting people, and I'm still broke.
Yeah, well, that's still true.
That's aviation.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So Herb Maxwell taught you to fly?
He did.
What was he like as a person and an instructor?
He was a great guy. he was modest, knowledgeable, and easygoing.
Mm.
And you marry all those things together, he had a real gentleman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And a good instructor.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
He could do things with an aeroplane that I wouldn't even dream of. One thing I had to do was a stool. This is to satisfy Herb's desire to know that I could get out of a tricky situation. So we went up out here in Bridge Bar, and he says, right, we better do a stool. And the minute he said we better do a stool, I thought, oh, crikey, Dick, I thought my inside started collapsing. But when I did the stool, the Auster was pretty good, hard to stall. But at about the 6th or 7th attempt, it worked. I think Herb probably had a bit of an input there by pushing the wrong rudder pedal at the right time to make it happen.
Yeah.
But boy, did it go. It was on its back and over like a flipping rocket.
Wow.
So fast that my left cheek, hit the door frame violently.
And did he recover for you, or did he let you do it?
He told me the minute the thing went over, he said, now remember what I told you, you check forward, straighten it out with the rudder, but don't try doing anything about levelling the wings. You're going to get it flying first. And he showed me, once I realised that it was recoverable, it was cool.
Yeah. So when you got your PPL, straight away you said you're out into the bush.
Yeah.
But you didn't really know how to go bush flying.
Well, I had a yarn with Herb because he knew that what I got the aeroplane for was to get back into the scrub. But the flight examiner was not due for another 6 months at Bridge Bar. So I said to Herb, look, I'd like to get up and have a bit of a nose around these places, but I've got to wait. And he said, no, we can work it. Just what you've got to do is you ring me up first thing in the morning, then when you want to go flying. I want to know where you are, where you're going to be, and what time you'll be back. And as long as you keep in touch with me, good as gold.
Okay.
And he did that. I mean, he was a great guy.
Mm. So he would get up first thing in the morning and check out the weather?
I'd ring him up in the dark and hurtle down the hangar and open the doors and drag the aeroplane and spit the hand start in an Auster.
How did you learn to fly on airstrips in bush flying? Because you don't really learn those techniques in your PPL, do you?
You don't, no.
Were you self-taught or?
Yeah, the bush flying part was pretty near self-taught. Capable to keep the airspeed up to a certain degree, but not too high, but higher than the stall.
Can we talk about the first airstrip you built up the Mohaka?
Yeah.
I think you called it Mohaka International.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, building an airstrip is something that all us bush pilots, we dream of doing, but it's easier said than done, isn't it? Because finding a place where you're allowed to build it and then having the time and the equipment to go and do it is not that easy, is it, as you found?
Yeah. I think you can delete one of those problems, the finding a place. That was easy enough because I've been flying around looking for an airstrip for a while, and finally decided on what I called Manuka International Airfield. That's when I went to see my old mate Charlie Utera, good guy. And he said, oh, there's a kahua lives on that airstrip. He'll get you, he'll be waiting for you. Yeah, but finally did it. Took a long time.
How long would have it taken you to, because I think you did it in 2 stages, was that right?
Yeah, it was, because halfway through one stage I got a kickback off the chainsaw, which bounced the chainsaw into my right shin. When it was going. Man, they cut quick. But it slowed down a little bit as the sharpened chain bits went over the bone. And I could feel them. And I had a long walk out. I went, instead of going over the ridge top, which is the shortest distance, I had to go down the river.
So initially, I think you said you got it to 110 paces.
Yeah.
and there's a lot of Manuka that you had to remove.
Yeah.
How did you get rid of it all?
It was cut off, at ankle level, pretty low, folded and dragged into a long line along either side of the strip. And finally, internal combustion, I think, caused the fire. But when it was all over, it was all black and smouldery, and I thought, oh, golly, I'm going to get hell out of this. But I didn't. Just told anybody it was just another marriage having a burn-off. It was Maryland. And Charlie Terrell was a mate of mine anyway. He was a cunning old fella.
So tell me about the first landing at Mohaka International, because it was very short, and I think you had a bit of an upset on the first landing and broke the propeller. Is that right?
Yeah. Came in as slow as I could without stalling it, and a lot of power just to keep it flying. Got over the end of the airstrip, pushed the aeroplane down towards the ground even more, and then shut the throttle and applied both brakes. And for the first time in his miserable life, the brakes in that aeroplane worked. And it went over on its nose, smashed the propeller.
Did that take a bit of enthusiasm of it all out for you, breaking the aeroplane on the very first landing, or did you not?
I'd landed at other rather dubious places, but this was really a real handmade airstrip, So it was okay. But I had an aeroplane sitting in the bush. So I managed to find a guy who had an old gypsy mate's propeller, finer pitch than the one I'd had. It was a top dressing prop. Because there were two guys here in Hawke's Bay using Tigers for top dressing.
So then you lengthened the airstrip with an old a Bristol tractor.
That's right, yeah.
How did you get the tractor in there?
Walked it in until I got to the stage where I was looking straight over the edge of I'd parted the edge of the Manuka. I realised the aeroplane was the bulldozer was sitting at the top of a very old slip. And somebody had to get down. My experience with a tractor that small was negligible. Finally got more than halfway down, and I got to a stage where my skill level was far less than it needed to be.
And you realised that?
Yeah. But I met up with a guy called Huey Maunder, and he had had a bit of experience with this type of bulldozer before, and he came in and did the last little bit for me. But man, that was dicey. It was a crumbly rock, and on a little peninsula, nearly vertically, and had to go from right to left to right, cutting all the way down to the bottom.
Wow.
And then to get across the river, I had a wetsuit because I was keen on diving. Put on the wetsuit and an old pair of boots and a pair of gloves, and tied the air cleaner on top of the bonnet, so that once the thing was mobile, I could just reach one hand forward and hold it there. I went up the Mohaka probably about 20, 30 metres, until the water started surging past over the bonnet and got me, and then turned to the right, went down the river about 60 metres, and then had to cross a little channel. But it worked. And it shouldn't have done, really. It should have just stopped.
And then you extended the airstrip. How much did you extend it by?
Almost doubled it.
Wow.
The addition created with the tractor, the bulldozer, was enough for a very good acceleration. It was quite a steep slope.
Right. Yeah, I showed you yesterday the photo, the old surveying photo I found of that strip before and after you had used the dozer on it. And that was the first one was February 1973, and the second photo was October 1973.
Yeah.
So little did you know there was an aeroplane way overhead taking photos of what you're up to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was quite funny. Did you have any other incidents or accidents on that airstrip?
broke a tail wheel spring, which is fairly common with those old Austers because, it's just a short stem of spring steel poking out the back. And I've been getting beaten and beaten and beaten for probably 25, 30 years before I got there.
Mm.
And I did a pretty good job of beating it again. But
Yeah.
I'd by that time cut another strip at the head of the Ngaruroro River. And the first landing in there, I couldn't believe how skillful I was. I went whistling in there, eased the pole back, a bit more power to cushion it to land, and went touchdown and went boom, and it seemed suddenly fairly nose high. But we stopped at about 20 metres. I thought, oh boy, have I got this thing nailed. And I parked the aeroplane. I had to use a lot of power to move it, which should have woken me up. And then I walked back and had a quick look, and somebody had broken a tail wheel, and there's a tail wheel spring, and the tail wheel and a piece of chain right in the middle of the airstrip.
Some other idiot.
When we looked at oh no, another long walk out.
Yeah. I've done that too, twice.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, we're even.
Exactly. What was it like with weather?
And the Mohaka was generally reasonable.
Mm. Could you take off both directions?
Once.
Was it generally a one-way strip?
Yeah, generally it was, because of the additional piece I put in with the Bristol.
Yeah.
Gave her a downhill run towards the southwest, and the downhill slope was enough to give you a bit of inertia.
Yeah. Then at some point the Auster needed an engine overhaul, and the cost got out of control.
It was, yeah. Colossal.
So that was the impetus for getting rid of that aeroplane and getting the Jodel. Was that right?
That's right.
And what about the Auster? That would have, with the old, the Gypsy engine, that would have been a pretty underpowered aeroplane to fly.
It was, but reliable.
Yeah.
And you've got the right propeller. Right? Propeller fixes the Auster.
Right.
But you don't go very fast.
No, but you get off the ground quite...
Real fast, yeah.
Yeah. So why did you choose the Jodel, the D11? Did you look at other options?
It was about the only one really feasible.
Mm.
The airframe fuselage, if you like, it was all wood.
Yeah.
And it was easy to work with. And I've seen other Jodels with slightly smaller engines. They perform marvellously. When they stall, all they do is nod a little bit and carry on flying.
Mm. So that was Echo Foxtrot Kilo?
That's right.
Yeah. How long did it take you to build?
A couple of years. Well, I had to keep hunting to keep the aeroplane going because it was costing. All this money had to be picked up somewhere.
Right. Did you still own the Auster at that point?
A guy from Hastings, actually a builder, had noted that the Auster had no engine, asked some questions and said, I'll buy it off you. And which he did. But he had started the Jodel and he was a carpenter.
Ah, right.
So his workmanship was far in excess of my level. But he'd made part of the fuselage frame. But it still took a lot of work to get it done.
Yeah.
Because when you get two pieces of ply which are different in diameter, you got to smooth one down so that you end up with a thing called a splice. Thought only ropes had splices, but this thing, it worked out well.
What's your favourite aeroplane you've flown?
Jodel.
The Jodel?
Yep.
Why is that?
Oh, you put it on like a sock. Mm. Point it where you want to go. That's everything.
Yeah. And then Mohaka got put into pine trees.
Yeah.
So you couldn't go there anymore.
Had to find somewhere else.
So you tell quite a lot of stories in your books about the Rangi Strip.
Yeah.
So that was an old disused meat hunting strip?
Yeah. Some of the local guys, meat hunters from Taupo, had cut this little really narrow footpath along the top of a rock-strewn strip And it was on the top of the ridge, so it was crosswind. And yeah, it worked. But it was really difficult because always subject to a crosswind.
So you, I think you said your son walked in and sort of resurrected the airstrip, and then you came in and landed.
Yeah.
But you tell a lot of lovely stories about that place, and it seemed like it was a really special place for you, even though it was a horrible place to fly into.
Yeah, it was great because it was so difficult to get to, and the deer numbers had been worked over by helicopters from Taupo and all over. So there weren't a lot of deer there, but you could walk for miles.
What was it like flying into when there was a bit of westerly?
Difficult.
Can we talk about your other strip you built? I'm going to pronounce this wrong. The Ngaruroro.
Yeah.
Is that right?
It's pretty close.
How do you say it?
Well, the first two letters, NG, are the same pronunciation as the word tongue.
Ngaruroro.
Yeah, Ngaruroro.
You were saying you speak a bit of Maori.
A little wee bit.
Yeah.
Just enough to get into trouble.
Yeah. So this must have been an exciting time of your life, having another place to build a strip, but it didn't end up too well because it was in the corner of it was in the forest park. Is that right?
Well, actually, the Kora was right on the edge of the forest park.
Right, it wasn't actually in it.
The river was the boundary.
Yep.
And according to Doc, it was in the park.
But when you came to build it, you sort of just assumed it all was going to be okay, did you?
Well, I just kept my head down and pulled out a few wilding pines that needed a new home.
And went in and built this great airstrip. How long was that one?
That was about the average length of airstrips. It was about just over 200 metres.
And how long did it take you to build?
A full winter.
Right.
Always try and do outside work in the winter.
So was that was there Manuka or was that more scrub?
Mostly scrub, mostly tussock and monowai.
Okay. So how did you deal to it with spades and...
Sharp spade, had a long-handled spade and a file, kept the spade sharp enough to cut bread with, and just put a line down through the tussock with a fishing line, you know.
Yep.
Keep it straight.
Yep.
And about 30 metres down the strip, saw a rock. I'll soon get rid of that. So I made a determined effort with a long-handled spade, and I went clang. The spade moved, I moved, and the rock just sat there and glowered. I had to dig it out. It was part of the main range. You know?
Wow.
Man, I had to dig a big hole there.
Did you dig a hole and push the rock into it?
Yeah.
You must have been fit as a fiddle.
Yeah, well, I was fit for a good sleep over that one, I tell you.
Yeah. I think I've got here what you wrote about the first landing. The first landing was downslope towards the north, a direction dictated by the wind, and was successfully concluded after 3 overshoots. Was that right?
Yeah.
An aeronautical term which means that the first few goes were either cock-ups or not quite right. The big secret with an overshoot is to recognise the need nice and early and do it. An overshoot left too late usually results in a crater with smoke coming out of it.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
Coming from Hawke's Bay, across the northern sprawl of the Kawaka Range, over a saddle, at the head of the Harkness Stream, down this gully towards the Ngaruroro River, and you can't see anything at all that looks flat enough for an airstrip. But as you get right down near the river and you turn left, suddenly there it is. But if you blinked, you'd miss it.
Mm.
And the initial 20 metres was steeply uphill, which was an advantage for taking off. But you had to be quite clever when you were landing. But it worked okay, and that was with the Jodel.
Right. And your first takeoff, you said I was wrapped. All that work, the freezing cold, the rain, the river crossings, the aching back, they were all worth it. I had my own little strip on a piece of New Zealand's prime real estate that I'd fallen in love with years before, and now it was only half an hour from home. Euphoria with a capital U. Pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So you flew in a hut?
Initially I had a little tent in there. And at night I'd go down to the creek, which is 10 feet away, and wash the dishes. And it didn't take very long before an eel started sliding out of the overhanging vegetation up and started snuffling at the plate. Before long, we became quite good mates.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how did you fly the hut in? Did you sort of prefabricate it?
Yeah, prefabricated it at home in multiples of 6 feet.
And flew it in?
And flew it in, tied to the outside of mostly the outside of the aeroplane.
Wow.
And, reliving this particular area, I must have been a little bit different to other people, because...
You think?
Yeah. Yeah, but the only way to get things done is to get stuck into it.
Well, that's exactly right. Most of us think about it and think, I'd love to do that, but you were out there doing it.
Well, I had to, yeah.
Why did you have to?
Well, it was a lonely piece of real estate. Nobody lived there or anything, and I was doing no harm, Your Honour. It was, it just begged to be made use of.
Mm.
And of course I got rid of a few wilding pines, helped the country out.
You were obviously, you just loved being in the bush by yourself. Was that your whole goal in life, to be by yourself in the bush?
Yeah.
Did you ever go hunting with mates, or pretty much always by yourself?
Nearly always alone, because you had the Jodel then, and one guy and his gear and the Jodel made it fairly full.
Yeah. But it doesn't sound like you wanted to go hunting with anyone else anyway.
No, it means you double the number of feet, you double the number of farts, everything gets doubled.
Yeah. You had a little incident on there with the Jodel. You had painted the oleos.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you say what happened with that?
Well, the aeroplane had a telescopic undercarriage, like most shock absorbers nowadays anyway. But a little bit of rust starting to show up. So I got out the paintbrush, I rubbed it all down and painted it. And on the first landing on the strip, the right-hand undercarriage retracted and the left-hand one didn't. It stayed there rock solid. So I managed to fly out one wing low. I was very worried about that wing brushing the tussock and destroying its ability to lift. Mm. But anyway, it lifted off, and I flew it back home and got to the hangar and pulled the undercarriage assembly off the wing. Went to the local Ministry Works bloke, and who did a lot of work for the forestry anyway, and said, any chance of hooking a grader onto this wheel thing so we can pull it apart? Yeah. Well, it took, I can still remember the flexing of the back tyres on this massive great grader, 6-wheeler, as the power went on, and the undercarriage, which was chained to a parked D8, just did nothing at all. So there's one hell of a bang. Wow. Like an artillery piece as the paint let go.
Yeah. And you took the paint off after that.
Yeah. Just kept oiling it.
Yeah. Yeah. Lesson learned. There was another story you said where you floated down the strip and you ended up doing an intentional ground loop because there was a lot of rain and no braking action.
Yeah, that's right.
and you tell a funny story about stages of confidence. I'll just read it out. The first stage of confidence is usually the cautious, even hesitant stage. The second stage is the quietly confident and usually competent one, which is exactly the same as stage 4, only with a bit less experience. But it's stage 3 which is the tricky one. This is where the operator gets a very debilitating mindset called blasé. It's French, like accoutrements, and is potentially like wiping your bum with stinging nettles. Once the action starts, the end results are usually unpleasant and often very painful.
Gosh, I can't remember that wrote things like
Ros
that.
obviously let that one through.
Well, it'd probably been a fight over it.
Yeah, but that must have been, you must have been in that stage, were you? Just a bit overconfident that day.
I've got a feeling that the wet conditions on the strip and a southerly tailwind had a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mainly the tailwind.
Mm. And of much faster speed than you should have been going.
Yeah. Well, I got to the stage where it's about 40 or 50 feet from the end of the strip, which would have been the end of me. It was the head of a little wet gully, but it was hard. The opposite side of the gully was, obviously New Zealand. And being a faithful Kiwi, I didn't want to knock it around too much, but I deliberately steered it to the right, just using the rudder, airflow of the rudder. And the minute it was facing across the strip, and I was on the far right of the strip itself, just jammed on the left brake. And it spun around real quick. There was no traction, really, to make it do anything less.
And you saved it.
Saved it.
Yeah.
And skidded and wallowed and taxied back for another night in the bush.
But it's like we were saying yesterday, you're out there so often for years on end, every weekend. You're going to have some upsets, aren't you?
Oh, of course
you
you
can't
are, yeah.
go and do that amount of flying and pushing the limits without having the odd little upset.
Yeah.
Then the bureaucrats found out about your beloved strip.
Yep, out. Yeah, because it was dock.
Right.
Luckily, the dock guys who had been advised or been charged with going in there and wrecking the strip,
like digging trenches across it.
Digging trenches across it, anything to destroy the ability of the airplane to land on it. But we all worked for the same firm. And the good guys already ran. I mean, 2 guys went all the way in there on foot from Boyd's, got wet feet, and one of them, I remember one of them saying to me, Perv said to me, how the hell he lands on a place like this? He must be nuts. They had that right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't do it.
No, well, they said they'd been there, they couldn't find the airstrip. Well, I could find it from several hundred feet away, no trouble.
Well, that was good of them. They were sticking up for their
the
mate.
Good guys, yeah.
Yeah. You said that gave me enough encouragement to put the airstrip operations on hold rather than write it off altogether. So I decided to keep my head down for a while, let the dust settle before having the odd little sneak back to my favourite posse. Some people just never learn.
Yeah.
Did you sneak back in there a few times?
I did, yeah. I tried to keep it quiet.
Yeah.
I'd slip down that that deep gully from the Harkness through the saddle and then low level down almost amongst the toy, all the way down this thingy, moving from left to right all the time to make sure I had the right perspective, because at point A or point X, whichever you like, you had to spin the thing over in a real tight turn, bring the nose up, put a bit of power on, and there was the airstrip right in front of you.
Right.
And if you didn't get things right, you're going to be history.
You're going to be part of New Zealand.
Yeah.
And then eventually they smashed your hut up.
They did. And the guys who did the smashing were very reluctant. In fact, I went to the headquarters of the ranger at Puketetri. This is my Maori mate, Edi Tikahika, and he was real good. He was charged with going in and removing the hut, which meant smashing it, and putting it in a big net and flying it out to dump it somewhere. And the first thing I knew about it, the grapevine said that I was being very naughty being there. Funny how the general members of the public could go back and forth without any problem at all. But not if you worked for the firm.
Was it because you worked for the firm, or because they... Why were they so upset with you being there?
It was a national park, or a forest park rather, not a national park.
Yeah.
When I got back, the guys had wrecked the thing. The hut was lying outside in bits, or just a big stack of rubbish. At the headquarters at Puketetri, and Eddie was there, and he said he saved what we could. Sympathetic, because he still is a good guy. Very strongly built Maori fella.
So have you been dragged in for a few meetings with the bosses and put through the ringer?
Oh, a little bit.
But mainly they just wanted you out.
Out of there, yeah. And even the bosses, or one boss was very savagely opposed to this sort of thing, because the hut was there, it wasn't locked.
Yeah.
And if anybody got caught, by weather, there's shelter. Anyway, they pulled it apart. And when I went down to see Eddie at Puketetri, at his base, one of the senior ranger fella wandered over, and he says, "Come over and I'll show you your hut." And of course, in the corner of the place was the wreckage. And he says, "There it is." And it was just a heap of rubbish, really, smashed to bits. And he showed me, and as he was doing this, one of the junior rangers was walking past, and he said, "You bastard," and carried on. It wasn't directed at me or the wreckage, it was the guy who'd ordered it.
Pretty spiteful way.
It was, yeah. What he could have done was say, "Go in there and remove it, pull it apart, stack it, and we'll bring it out." But he didn't do that, it was smashed.
Yeah. That must have been a pretty tough time in your life, was it?
It was, yeah. But never mind.
You moved on. What you said about that, and this was the end of book number 2, which was a bit of a sad ending, I felt. You said, "I'll find another place, a wild, lonely place where no bugger can touch me, and start all over again. If you happen to be in a place where the river holds good trout in its clear waters, where the swift falcon sweeps along beach-clad ridges, and the golden tussock bows to a soft breeze, a lonely place, but home to those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, and you happen to see a small olive-green aircraft land gently on a small terrace or river beach, come over and say good day, and I'll shout you a brew. We can talk about the wonders of nature and feel that marvellous peace all around us, but please, if you don't want to start World War III, don't mention the word bureaucrat." It was a nice and a sad way, I think, to end book number 2, which was Hell for Leather.
Yeah.
You did a trip down to South Westland in the Jodel.
Yeah.
And like you say, you realised that the low wing design wasn't suitable for a lot of these strips. So then you thought you'll go back to a high wing design, and you bought an Auster and did something really naughty.
Yeah.
What made you think you could get away with putting a car engine in a certified aeroplane?
Well, it's the word certified that stuffs it all up. It had been done overseas, but not in the Northern Hemisphere, certainly not with the Rover V8. The alternative to the Rover was Leyland V8, but it was a lot heavier.
Yeah.
The thing that governed the power output, of course, was the reduction drive to the propeller. The best I could get out of that and still stay within a bull's roar of one of the grossly overfed, overweight, and over-enthused bureaucrats in Wellington believed. It was only a matter of about 4 or 5 cogs or splines on the gear the gear, the reduction gear.
Yep.
Yeah, but it worked. It was as good as the original Gypsy Major. It used about 2 gallons an hour less fuel.
Okay.
And it didn't use any oil at all. And one of the other things it was good for was starting. Just walked over, hopped and turned the key, and the propeller disappeared, and there was a bit of a rumble underneath like a V8, which it was.
Did it just purr, did it?
Oh, it did. You had that bit of a rumble because I made up an exhaust system for it. Yeah, it was good.
Did you think a bit about the weight of a liquid-cooled engine?
Yeah, I did.
Because, I mean, it's not the first time. You know, in World War II, all the big engines were liquid-cooled.
They were, yeah.
But on a small GA aeroplane in those days, it probably wasn't very common.
Well,
Would that be right? Or?
As far as I knew, I'd been in touch with a few people, and there was a guy in England, of all places, who had some idea about putting a Rover V8 or a Daimler V8 or a Jaguar V8, whatever, into an aeroplane. The trouble is that many of those things had cast iron blocks. Mm. And the Rover V8 had an aluminium block, and it was a derivative of an American, I think a Dodge, but everything was aluminium, so it was relatively light.
Yeah, right.
But when you fill it with coolant, it didn't take that much really, but as you well know, being a pilot yourself, ounces can sneak into little corners and come out when you don't expect it.
How many horsepower did it produce?
It's theoretically 235, I think.
So that's a bit of an increase from the Gypsy.
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely.
Same airframe.
Yeah.
And it would have been really torquey, was it? Because, I mean, what RPM did the engine run at? 4,000 or 5,000? Or?
The engine ran at 4.8.
Yeah.
This was to try and I had to keep it, the propeller speed down to something manageable, but less or equal to the Gypsy Major. Mm.
So did you play around with a few different reduction amounts?
Well, I did a little bit, but mainly it was the bureaucrats that said you can't have this thing, you'll tear the wings off it. Mm. I thought, how the hell do you tear the wings off an old thing like an Auster? Yeah.
So you obviously went to talk to the CAA before you started building it?
I did this time, yep.
Yeah, that was very good of you. Very compliant.
Yeah. Actually, most of the guys there that actually worked and had grease on their fingers, they were helpful.
Yeah.
They were good.
So you had done some computer stress analysis calculations?
Yeah, I did. There was a guy who had done a lot of calculations on the north-south highway out here. Civil engineering, but the numbers are the same. Mm. And he worked out the 2 little stubs additional in the engine mount, left and right, so that nothing was particularly concentrated in the stress area.
Yeah. And you presented that to the CAA, and what did they say? Did they say go ahead? Or?
Well, they said get stuffed, really.
Initially?
Yeah, initially, but it turned out that the then director was an ex-Air Force officer in engineering, And when I talked to him about it, he said, "Oh, golly, some of my staff are fairly conservative." And I said, "Well, that's all right. I don't mind them being conservative." He said, "They won't like this." But he said, "No, there's nothing wrong with it. If you can make it fly and operate within the limits safely, you have my blessing. Good luck to you." Mm. He was right about the conservatism.
What you said is you were after that meeting, you were encouraged by the director's attitude, although still a little confused by this deity called the Regs, worshipped by the bureaucrats. I launched into Operation Auster.
Yeah. Yep.
So you put it in, flight care helped you?
With advice and occasional bits.
Yeah, Barry Mackay, who I used to know, and Maurice Foster Pratt.
Yeah.
And you told a story once it was all up and running, you just parked it outside flight care and just left it running at, I don't know, very low RPM. And it was just ticking away so slow you could pretty much see the propeller turning, and you just watched the engineers come out of the hangar and look at this thing in amazement.
Yeah.
Must have sounded gorgeous.
Well, it just made a sort of chopping noise, but it was very slow.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the engine speed was, but it was probably something around about 700, maybe 600 or 700 RPM at idle. And I got a lot of pleasure out of disappearing around the hangar and appearing again at the other side of the hangar, peering through the little crack in the door, and saw Barry Mackay look over at the parked Auster and say, so I could see him, he said something to Morris. And Morris turned his head. They were working on another aircraft. And they both walked over to the idling Auster. And I saw Barry shaking his head. Yeah, but you could, it was idling so you could put a coin on top of the engine cowling. As long as you keep your finger on to stop the wind blowing it off, it just sat there. It was as smooth as silk.
Wow.
But I bet the Auster with the Rover went well.
Well, unfortunately, the man in the civil aviation, because they try and help us, you know, you get a pat on the head, usually with a brick, and say, anything you need, just call on us and we'll help you. What they mean is just hide everything because we're coming to have a look. Yeah, but
you did manage to do a few hours in that, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lovely aeroplane to fly with the Rover.
Did it?
Not fast.
No, but did it get off the deck quickly?
Yeah, about the same as with the Gypsy Major.
Okay.
Because the department decided that it had a Gypsy Major in it, so you can't put any more power than that in it. Otherwise you'll rip the wings off. I thought, oh, joy. Fancy having power like that. But when I made the reduction drive, you know, two belts.
Right.
Or two machined pulleys to carry belts, tooth belts. The best I could get from it, and still stay roughly within the limits the department put on me, was a little bit better than the Gypsy Major, but not much.
Okay.
The big advantage was oil consumption.
Yeah, there was none.
Well, you fly the Auster for an hour, get out and pour another couple of gallons in and fly the V8 powered Auster for 2 or 3 years. And it never moved on the stick.
Yeah, yeah.
And starting was immediate. Just a quick flick and she's running. Hardly hear it.
Wow.
Could have made up an exhaust system using fiberglass, you know, inside a cylinder. And the only reason you knew it was going was you couldn't find the propeller. It had gone somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet it caused a few heads to turn because it was so unusual to see anything different back in those days.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you do the first flight? Was that, did you CAA give you any approval to go and fly it?
Yeah, I asked for approval to fly it and knew that, come up with some ridiculous idea of having a licensed aeronautical engineer do a big study on the stresses here and the stresses there. And I thought, for goodness sake, this engine has powered probably hundreds of thousands of Yanks all around the States and in England and here in New Zealand. Same car, same engine, and they're still going. And eventually they, in the end, some of the more intelligent people there came out and they gave me the go-ahead for 10 hours. Unfortunately, I'd already tried the thing. And when I went out on the day of the big inspection, one of them said, "Oh, you can't do that. That's not on. That's not approved." And I said, "But it works." And they said, "No, it doesn't work. It can't work. It hasn't been approved. We've got to do all these tests." And one of the guys said, "We'll give you the name of or names of 3 different people." One was Graham Murphy.
I know Graham.
Yeah. And they can do a stress analysis and do all this sort of stuff. So I contacted Graham. I said, "How much?" And he says, "Oh, golly, what a headache." He said, "Look, to do it properly, you're looking at least $40,000. That was ridiculous. Anyway, he was a good guy.
But you had already proved it works fine because you had, by this time, done a bit of flying in it.
I did about 6 hours in it just to make sure. And when they found out, the department came, obviously to talk to me about this thing because it was the first up. And there's the guys walking and saying, "Oh, you can't have that. That's no good. And this is wrong. This hose you've got here out of the cooling tank." And I said, "That's the water recovery. The radiator recovery expands, got to go somewhere, it goes into a tank. And it sits there until it's needed and it slides down into the engine again." They said, "Well, it'll never fly." And I said, "It does fly. It flies beautifully." And we had at that stage, the guy said to me, and I can't even remember his name now, who'd want to. He said, "You've flown it." And the guy, engineer at the time, he said, "He's flown it." "Hey, Gene was their guy." He said, "He's flown this thing." And with that, they dropped everything they had, and I've never seen so many overweight engineers move so fast in my life. Straight over to the control tower to get the facts.
I think you said in your book you flew it for a total of 53 hours. 173 landings, many flights 9.8 miles from Napier to Rissington, because you must have at one point had a 10-mile limit, didn't you?
Yeah, it did.
Big bounces right over the Kawekas to the airstrip.
Yeah, I made it to some rough landings.
So what happened when the CAA found out what you'd been up to?
Oh, they made all sorts of fuss.
All hell broke loose, I'm sure.
Yeah, it did. And the poor old director, he was a good guy. Can't remember his name now, but he was a good bloke. He said, "Hey, never mind. You tried, and it worked."
But they prosecuted you?
They did. Flying shared aircraft within the Dominion of New Zealand without a suitable certificate of airworthiness.
And what was the punishment for Charlie?
A slap on the wrist from the judge. I told the judge everything that I knew, and the back row of the courthouse was solid with waistcoats and all the rest of it, and tummies stretching buttons to pop out. And they looked so pissed off. I think they were waiting for
a jail sentence or something.
Well, a ceremonial execution,
Yeah.
But the judge just said, "Oh, well," he said, "you guilty as charged of flying this aircraft within the Dominion of New Zealand without a certificate of airworthiness. How do you plead?" I said, "Yeah, I did it. And it works beautifully. It works far in excess of the efficiency of the original design engine." And he says, But when I went to get advised of the sentence I was going to get, he said, His Honour, the clerk of the court said, His Honour feels that there's no need for a penalty in this case because you're losing so much in doing it. And that was it.
And that was pretty true, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Another gutting thing after the loss of the airstrip.
Yeah, just one after the other.
Yeah. I'll read what you wrote about that. These overfed, underworked, and certainly undercommitted expletive bureaucrats, not having the intestinal fortitude to sign a piece of paper themselves, were passing the buck to someone else. And in spite of all the well-documented test flying I'd done, they wanted it done all again, but with a different type of bureaucrat watching. I've been told to stop here because steam is coming out of my ears. There's blood in my eyes. I keep dropping the pen and reaching for the rifle. I'll come back when I've had a couple of snorts of veterinary tranquilizer and the Salvation Army has locked my cannons away. What the letter did, in effect, was tell me that in spite of thousands of dollars worth of blood, sweat and tears, in spite of the proven flight record of the aircraft, I could go and get stuffed. I was a pilot without an aircraft.
Yeah.
And you had recently lost your job at the Forest Service, and I think your dog had recently been killed, so this was all a bit of a tough time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Felt like you had a bit of a kick in the guts, I suppose.
Well, as far as the dog was concerned, it was a bitch, a German short-haired pointer. Good dog. Very exuberant. And when she galloped, her ears flapped like you just to hear them. But I flew into the Ngaruroro Strip to find it clagged in with fog. So I had to overshoot. Boys couldn't touch boys. It was the same level. But I went up over one of the saddle of Gold Creek, into another area towards Taupo, and played around there doing little bits and pieces, wing overs, and as you do.
Yeah.
And about halfway through that little journey and heading back to see how the strip was faring with the fog, I heard this sort of coughing noise behind my ear. And that was the dog bringing up her breakfast down the back of my neck. Oh, golly, it was horrible. Yeah.
So then you started a new project, which was the Protech, which you imported from the States.
The kit.
The kit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how long did that take to build?
It took about 3 years in total.
Yeah.
A different type of construction. There was an all-metal fuselage, which meant you couldn't plane something off. You had to use a gas axe or...
Yeah. It was a welded tube fuselage.
Welded tube, yeah.
Yeah.
It had a small tailplane, very small vertical fin, and relatively small elevator panels. When you lift it off and turned either left or right, because of the small area of the tailplane, the rudder, you'd push the left-hand rudder pedal to stay in balance and it would go to the right. So I had to enlarge the tail fin.
Right.
Yeah, but that worked.
Yeah.
The undercarriage was a one-piece spring, which had been two pieces and a butt welded together, and then had a hole bored through. Imagine drilling a hole through that. I mean, you just spend a lot of time getting it dead right. You have to drill a hole through your fresh weld. Yeah. Anyway, it cracked as anticipated.
After you did the 40-hour flight permit flying, you wrote this about the first flight of the Protech. With a deep booming roar, as full power is applied, the shark-like nose dips and then rises suddenly as the brakes are released. Twin spears of orange flame lance rearwards, and the pilot is slammed back in his seat with the awesome G-force generated by the 2 howling jet engines. The slim green fighter streaks down the runway, accelerating to incredible speed, and then the deep thud as the afterburners are cut in and the arrow-like missile streaks upward, almost vertically, a rapidly diminishing green dart that is lost to vision within seconds. Awesome. Dreams are free. Half an hour later, the pointy bit was still pointed at the kawekas, but they were getting closer.
Yeah.
You do right well.
Well, dreams are free.
Yeah, exactly.
If they get too free, they become nightmares.
With Manuka International now in pine trees and Ngaruroro off limits, the lure of the old Rangi Strip was too strong for Charlie. So against his better judgment, he braved the wind and went back in there, now with only 40 metres of the strip usable.
You were going towards the end of the strip, the thing was starting to go sideways. So you added a bit of power and went into wind a little bit until you were over the strip. Put the wheels down towards the ground and cut the throttle. And luckily the wind wasn't that strong that day, but I was committed and I had an aeroplane sitting on an airstrip.
I kept a couple of 100 feet of altitude in hand in case the breeze started playing jiggery-pokery with the aeroplane as I got closer to the ridge, but the air was deceptively smooth. Having once believed Roger Douglas and David Longy, however, I wasn't about to take any chances. I did 2 runs along the strip at progressively less altitude until I was quite sure that nothing nasty was going to pull me out of the sky. Then I set up the Protech for a landing approach, which, if it wasn't spot on, I could turn into an overshoot at the last minute. I swung the aircraft in a wide arc, maintaining 60 knots until we were set up on final about 200 metres from the Tane Mahuta tussock bush. Eased the nose up to slow the action down to around 50 knots and cranked on 2 notches of flat. So far so good, we were sinking steadily towards the usable bit of airstrip. As the distance narrowed to around 100 metres, I pulled on full flap and a bit more power, still dead on for the imaginary spot just past the tussock, and everything going so well I thought either I'm a real gun or this is all going to turn to custard very shortly. 50 metres, 12 metres, a bit more power, and as the nose came up slightly and the airspeed began to decay, more power, nearly there, and bum! At the last moment a significant breeze from the left, dead crosswind, and moving the aircraft off the line of the strip right in the last few seconds. "Here comes the custard," yells the captain to the passengers. 1 shovel, 1 spade and a mattock. Kicks the aircraft into wind, lowers the left wing, the tussock bush appears 6 metres ahead and shoots under the nose, a great burst of power, back on the pole, and we were down, dead on target and just about into the rough stuff in a couple of seconds. Throttle shut, mags off, and we hurtled into the low scrub with the tail wheel occasionally on the ground, but more often not, and the mains leaping all over the place. The aircraft veered off the strip to the left and back on again due to some very fast rudder work by the driver, the crosswind pushing the tail like a weather vane, and we were stopped, and alive, and still in one piece. Bloody amazing.
So I had to polish up the airstrip and built a little camp up there which lasted a week. I ran out of tucker. All I had a toothbrush, some toothpaste and a cake of soap.
You were stuck in there for several days, and then you obviously felt pressure to take off. What happened on that takeoff?
The wind had been howling for 3 or 4 days. It was a noisy place to be. All the trees were thrashing and, oh man, it was awful. But I thought, right, I'm going to have a go. And this thing, it'll lift off, no worries. Well, I finally got hold of the aeroplane, got it started, taxied out to the end of the slip, and it was rocking. Accelerated down the strip way past normal rotation speed. And on the very last piece of that strip, there was a circular area about as big as a trampoline. And I thought I can get onto that, get the wheels onto that, and try a bit of back pressure on the stick. Didn't work. I was really silly because by this time I was tired, I'd been hungry for days, and I gave it a whirl anyway, but the wind got up a big gust, picked the aeroplane up and flew it sideways about 20 feet, and one of the big nests of boulders that were there shuffled across to get in front of me, and boof, that was the end of it.
Those bloody boulders that move.
Yeah.
And dumped you down off the end of the strip.
Yeah. So I'm still on the same ridge, but yeah, just littered with holes and boulders. Oh, man, an awful place.
With fingers that suddenly turned into turnips, I found the emergency locator beacon and turned it off. I didn't need any drama right then. What I needed was to sit down somewhere and get my head together. I could just imagine the search and rescue organisation swinging into action in Wellington once the signal was received, and the news broadcasts on national radio. Search and Rescue Headquarters in Wellington is mobilising search aircraft from Whanuapai and Woodburn Air Force bases, following a faint signal picked up by an Air New Zealand flight into Auckland. There are no reports of missing aircraft, but the signals appear to be centred around the mountainous high country in the central North Island. An Orion on a training flight to Rarotonga has been diverted and should be over the search area in 2 hours. But in the meantime, search and rescue personnel in Taupo, Hastings, Palmerston North and Washington DC are assembling, and an Iroquois and civilian helicopters are mustering to begin the search. I let out a low moan. Death by wind is preferable to all that.
But I had a little radio tuned to the frequency of the Forest Service, and I called up the man in charge of the nearest forestry block, Eddie Takahika. He was great. He rang around. Unfortunately, on the particular day all this took place, there had been a fatal accident with a top dressing pilot, and all the helicopters within 20 miles had no pilots and all gone to Wellington to the funeral. And finally a guy got hold of the chap from Taupo,
John
Fennell, and he said he sent his machine in with a couple of guys. They picked me up and flew me out.
They flew the aeroplane out?
Eventually, yeah.
Well, I hate to admit it, but I'm not bulletproof, and I'm not 4 meters tall. It just goes to show that if you nudge the odds often enough, one day, bro, they'll nudge you back. If any budding or perhaps more experienced pilot has just gone and blown a few bucks to read this little book, I sincerely hope that he, she, or it, you can never be sure nowadays, can learn from my experiences. Eventually, God willing, I will too.
I think you made a few changes to the Protech when you repaired it. I think you said you increased the size of the fin and the rudder and a few little things to make it fly straighter.
Yeah.
So this is the Protech that used to be green, is it?
Yeah.
When did it become white?
It was after the event that I don't want to really think about.
Right.
Yeah, no. Decided a green aeroplane in the bush is pretty dumb if something goes wrong.
I feel very privileged to be in this special plane. There's a lot of history in this little aeroplane.
Yes, it sure is.
Did you ever carry things outside the plane, like strap it to the strut?
Yeah. A sleeve for the stove in the hut, my hut in the camp.
Yeah.
The frontal area of the thing, it was 16 gauge, which is not very big.
Of the flu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it looked very impressive.
And you had that strap to the side?
On the other side, yeah.
Yeah.
And not that much longer, I had to apply for something from the department.
I bet you never did that.
No, I didn't, but the permit to fly I got for this other one over here, down the back, was no external loading.
Oh.
You think they have better things to do, would you?
Yeah. The exhaust?
The exhaust. Well, it's a wrap of stainless steel mesh around, I think, about a 1-inch tube. And it's inside a 3-inch tube, so you get a fair bit inside it. But unfortunately, after a while of hard work, there's a bit of a roar from the engine sometimes, and you just know you just blown off the guts of the exhaust system out. But it does make it much nicer to fly.
Wow. And it's quieter inside, is
Oh,
it?
yeah. You get quieter inside, and people on the ground can hardly hear it.
Mm. It looks pretty mean. Why did you decide to build another plane?
I've got no idea, but I wish I knew, because I'd shoot the guy that sowed the seed.
It's probably the one question that everyone asks when they start building a plane, is it?
Yeah, it could be, but it's little bits, it's fun.
Yeah.
Getting it right and adding little things to make it righter.
So I see this one's got a Rotax engine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looks very nice. Have you done the wings yet?
Yep. They're in,
Oh, there they are over there.
yeah.
Yep. So this will be airplane number 5. Is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
You're losing count. And this has got the fat tyres too.
For its size, yeah, but I was going to put bigger ones on, but it's a fairly draggy aeroplane anyway.
Mm.
If you keep going up and up and up into the T-Rex and Caterpillar range,
You need
about all you can get is a full throttle taxi downhill.
And then when you flew it again, there was a couple of funny stories because you needed somewhere to go, and you were desperate, and you said you went straight back to Tarangi.
Yeah. Well, I left a lot of gear in there, and the day I picked was a frosty day, and the air was fairly calm getting in there, but I thought, oh man, this is dodgy. All you need is a bit of west in the wind, and let's face it, west is normally the standard up there.
Yeah.
And it was just starting to pick up. I turned around and got out of there quick.
Snuck away again.
Yeah.
Common sense sort of came to the front. And then you were still had nowhere to go, so you went back to your own old strip at the Ngaruroro, which you weren't allowed to go to.
Yeah. Well, I used to sneak in there and I had a great big sheet of, I think they call it scrim. You put it under wallpaper, or you put it over an aeroplane. You don't want people to see it, but you had already painted it brown and green and brown and green. And while you were putting it on the aeroplane disappeared.
Mm.
Fantastic.
Did you have a few hairy trips in the mountains with weather?
Yeah.
You tell one story, I think you were coming back in the Jodel after your dad's funeral and you got stuck in clouds.
Yeah, I'd made inquiries about the cloud cover in Napier, and I knew that it was within my limits. And I flew through the Manuka Gorge, but slightly above it, and it was pretty claggy, but turned left over Woodville, and it was wall-to-wall flag. I thought, oh, yeah, I'll climb this, because I know it's clear in Napier. So I just kept on climbing and climbing and climbing, and so did the top of the clouds. And I got to a point, probably a beam Dannevirke or close to it, when it became obvious I kept doing this and ended up turning green and having antenna, you know. But yeah, lowered the nose. I was going to descend through the cloud. I knew it had about 1,000 feet clearance at ground level. But lowered the nose and descended into the murk, and as the thing went into the cloud, it suddenly dawned on me what I was doing. I thought, man, this is going to end badly. And luckily it didn't.
Because you wouldn't have had an artificial horizon in the aeroplane?
Yeah, had all the relevant instruments, but
Right.
having the instruments there and knowing how to use them properly is two different things. Yeah. But at one stage, going down through this very, very heavy cloud, there was a little black hole appeared, and through the black hole, the red roof of a little farmhouse shot across the gap and disappeared. So I knew where I was, what I was doing, and only probably 10 or 15 seconds later, we blistered out of it.
Pretty scary.
It was very scary.
And I suppose your mind wasn't on it after being to your dad's funeral.
Yeah.
As we mentioned, another one of your passions is hunting. And I think one of the reasons why, you're a bit of a legend for me and a lot of others is, I'm just a fair weather hunter, go out on a nice day. If it's too cold or too wet, I'll stay at home, pretty pathetic really. But you were so keen, you're just out there all the time.
Yeah.
All hours of the night, winter, summer, rain, hail. One night, you say, after a soaking night in the rain and wind and snow, the fed-up feeling lasted at least 8 hours after the aircraft had been rolled into her dirt-floored hangar, which was a bit of a record. By mid-morning Monday, I was busting to get back.
Yeah. Just shows the high IQ level of the average private pilot. We have a little underline of under average.
Yeah. You told a funny story of your dog eating the windpipe of a deer.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
What happened there?
Well, it was night time, and I was being a bit naughty. I was wandering around at night with a spotlight. And finally, after quite a few river crossings and blundering about, spotted these big green lamps. There was a young stag, or a stag, was out in the middle of a swamp. Shot the stag, and it collapsed where it was. I had to blunder around trying to find it. And when I got there, it suddenly sprang up out of the scrub and started shaking, getting all upset. So I had to shoot it twice, which is both in the neck, of course, which is instant cormate normally. But when I gutted the animal, I hauled out the windpipe, and my dog, real greedy guts, I mean, she's well fed anyway, but she was waiting. And this windpipe comes sailing into the sky. She grabbed it, and she went through the windpipe. Oh, golly, it was horrible, revolting. I didn't want to take her home. It went, ah. And then she finally got rid of it. I had to pull it out of her neck.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So this is Japs we're talking.
Yeah.
They're Seeker. Is that Seeker?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've shot a lot of those up here?
Well, in the Kawikas mainly.
Yeah.
And a few over in the Homingi bush, north of Homingi. Yeah. Great deer. Very sneaky.
We don't get them down south.
No.
Have you shot much down in Stewart Island with the whitetail?
No. I went down there once, shot one, and had enough meat to bring back. That's it. I mean, you're just taking a life to cut its head off, stick on the wall somewhere. Nah.
Yeah, you seem to have, reading your books, you seem to have sort of changed your mentality quite a lot over the years.
Yeah.
Going to more of a conservationist than a hunter.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean, but never liked the idea of shooting, too many deer.
What do you think about the deer control back in the 60s and 70s, down south? especially
Yeah.
because they were out of control. Was that something that had to be done, or?
It probably was. I've seen bush that have been grazed out by deer, and there's trees there certainly, but under the trees there's nothing.
Yeah.
But an intelligent response to conservation of quite an asset. You know, the wapiti, yeah, they're big.
But they're managed very well now, aren't they?
Yeah, because it's a private organisation doing it. Who aren't concerned about making a loud noise when they think it's wrong. So they've done well.
Yeah. And I know reading Dick Deaker's book, don't know if you've probably read it, but you know, he was part of all that helicopter venison recovery.
Yeah.
But you know, even he says ethically it was dubious, and there's other ways to manage and think of them as an asset rather than something that just had to be exterminated.
Yeah.
You used many rifle calibers over the years, but you seem to be a bit of a fan for light, high-powered calibers. Would that be true?
Yeah.
What would have your favourite calibers been?
Well, the favourite all-rounder would have been the 270 Winchester.
Okay.
Because that had long legs, reach out, recoil wasn't too bad. Yeah, and also used the 222 for a while.
Yep.
And currently got a 250 Savage caliber, an old rifle. It was built in 1928, I think.
Wow.
But the serial on those caliber rifles was the year of manufacture, followed by a number.
Okay. And you had a Colt 223 semi-automatic for a while?
Yeah. Best rifle I've ever had. Beautiful.
Did you have to hand that in with the buyback scheme?
Yeah. And at home, the slowly eroding statue of Jacinda, full of rock marks and dog poo and everything you think of. Yeah, it was a shame to lose that cannon. It was a really, very highly accurate, really good rifle.
What did you think of that whole saga with having to give back all those?
It was shocking, really. Some turkey loses his rag, and the whole country pays for it. I don't mean financially, because, but I lost I lost the Colt, and I think I had another rifle there that just took off me. But other guys were in the same boat.
Yeah.
There was one bloke there that had a very, very early, when it was in operation, it was a machine gun. And you could mount it on a frame with wheels. It was a museum piece. And he had to hand that in. I didn't even know one existed.
Probably got destroyed.
It would have been destroyed along with my one. But the Colt, when it was tuned up with a decent trigger, because I had to put a decent trigger on it, this is the AR-15, you could shoot thumb-hole size groups of 5 rounds, 100 metres off a rest, just time after time after time.
Yeah. So you would always shoot in the neck?
Always, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you don't damage all the body meat for a start, but as long as you have the centre of the neck lined up, any contact there with a decent caliber, and they just get on the deck suddenly.
And did you try and keep the range, to a minimum? I mean, were you into any sort of 300-400 metre stuff?
No. It makes the bullets puff with exhaustion going that far. 150 metres would have been the maximum.
Yeah.
But normally well under that.
Which means a lot of stalking and getting close.
Yeah. On one occasion, heading into my Ngaruroro Strip on foot, went up a side gully and spotted at the head of that little side gully a second little gully. And I think there were about 7 Seeker deer in it. And they're all in a little group, all grazing quietly away, which it seems a shame to disturb them. But I writhed through the undergrowth for about 20 odd metres and lifted the rifle to make sure I could see through the scope. And when I lifted the rifle up, I was looking straight up the nostrils of the nearest deer, which had heard me rustling. And I turned around to see what the heck was coming. And it gave a particularly terrified scream and pooed. And I did the same, except the pooing. Give me a hell of a fright. Because this is only 6 inches off the deck, you know.
Wow. Sometime, I think maybe around 1996, you were saying this morning, life took a good turn and you got offered the use of Neville Smith's old strip up at the Tihoe.
Yeah.
How did that all come about?
Well, I met Neville, and he said, "How's it going?" And I said, "Terrible. Every time I stick my neck out, somebody chops it." And I said, "I'm getting really pissed off with this. But I've really got nowhere to go within reasonable range of my home patch." And he said, "I've moved out of my strip." He said, "It's still there. Plenty of good water. There's a hut on it. It's getting a wee bit dodgy now." But he said, "Go get it." So I contacted the landowners, and they said, "Oh, we need a caretaker."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "You've got one," just like that. And they said, "How much do we have to pay?" And I said, "It's free. I'll be there
Tomorrow.
Yeah, be there now. Don't hang the phone up." Yeah, but it was all just sheer luck.
Wow, that must have been like a dream finally falling into place.
It was.
Yeah.
When I got in there, the airstrip was visible only as a long tongue of Manuka, about 4 or 5 feet high. And the access in there was Manuka and Toi Toi, so you couldn't see through it. You had to get down really low and see where the pigs had gone to get to the hut. But I field tested a dock tractor with a mower on the back.
You're doing Doc all sorts of favours.
Yeah, I'm helping them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, I mowed it with this tractor, and it came up really well. I mean, the bones were there, and it just needed tidying. Once I had a good access in there, it was all hands to the pump, fixing windows, putting roof parts on, and
was the hut in poor shape?
Yeah, it was. Unfortunately, most Kiwi hunters, or perhaps not most, but some Kiwi hunters are real gross. They leave rubbish laying everywhere and never clean the hut up afterwards. And this thing had, as you walked into the hut, you feel yourself going up and down because the floor support had gone. But it's come up good now.
So you spent quite a lot of time flying materials into the hut.
Yeah.
What was some of the large items that you flew in?
Water tanks. Normally you'd go across the airstrip on foot and then descend about a 45-degree angle, descend down to the riverbed, then across the rocky riverbed with a bucket, and you fill it up with water, and you'd always get to the top of the slope on the way back before you tripped, and it'd all end up going down your gumboots. But it had to be a better way, so I got hold of some. You've seen blue plastic drums around it.
Yeah, a couple of 100 litres.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got all the gear together, popped a 60-litre drum in the passenger seat on the aeroplane. Waved my mate goodbye. There's a guy there giving me a hand to wriggle this thing in amongst all the bits and pieces. Yeah, and away I went. But I didn't realise, when I lifted off at 500 feet, as obliged to do, you do a gentle right-hand turn to vacate the circuit. And when I did the gentle right-hand turn, I found all I could see was blue plastic. Bugger.
So what was the landing like with the tank?
By that time, my neck had grown used to being twisted at about 360 degrees. And no, the landing was okay, but getting the drum out was a hell of a job.
Because you were by yourself then?
Yeah. The best way to describe this would be for you to come and have a look.
Sounds like a good mission.
Hmm.
And you flew a stove and
Yeah,
a fluid.
I got a little bit of bother with this civil aviation inspector. He turned up one day and said g'day, and he's such a nice fella.
He turned up to the camp.
No, at the hangar.
Oh, yeah.
And he's just come to see how you're getting on and make sure all the bits and pieces are in line.
Were they keeping an eye on you, were they?
Oh, this guy was.
Yeah.
But in a kindly way.
Yeah.
There were quite, in civil aviation, there are the pluses and the minuses. And unfortunately, the minuses usually have a Pommy accent and an overfilled waistcoat. This guy was a Kiwi. Anyway, I had this wood-burning stove, only a small one, and it dismantled on the workbench in the hangar. And he says, "What's all that about?" And I said, "Oh, cabin heating." I said, "It's blowing cold in this thing at night when you get up a wee bit." He says, "Really?" And I said, "No, I'm pulling your leg." Then afterwards, you don't pull legs with civil aviation, but this guy was a good one.
But did you have to tell him you were flying it in?
I told him I was just taking it into my camp, dismantled. It's quite heavy, actually.
But not strapped to the outside of the aeroplane?
No, not strapped to the outside. It was inside with me. I keep an eye on it. Took a sheep up there one day.
In the plane?
In the plane. There's several times, several big animals in there. But on this particular occasion, a lady donated a well-grown lamb to go into the neighbours way down the river. Could I take it in for him, please? So the sheep's name was Snowy, and lifted Snowy into the back of the aeroplane, and she promptly tried to get out again, but I tied all her feet up, and I usually take a bit of pride in doing a job right. And then too often flew ahead for the airstrip, and I got at about the halfway mark across the toe of the Ngaruroro range, and I looked out to see how she was faring. She was right beside me, and she was standing there looking, watching all the sheep below, back and forth.
She was standing.
She was standing up. all my fancy knots were in a little bundle by her feet.
Was she calm?
Yeah, calm as ever.
Wow. Bet it gave you a bit of a fright, though. You
Oh,
don't
it
want
did.
her changing around.
Suddenly watched her like a hawk.
Yeah. The other thing that you talk in about that place is clearing out all the pests and the possums and the rats and the mice.
Yeah.
But once you did, the bird life and the wildlife was just amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's even better now because the owner of the block is a conservationist, Simon Hall, who runs Tasty Foods in Auckland, and he's decided to make it a sanctuary for Kiwi.
Right.
And so far, last count, there's been about 20 Kiwi eggs picked up in the bush and brought out and incubated.
Wow.
And the youngsters have been released back into the bush again.
Wow. And is there a concerted trapping program in the area to keep stoats and rats and?
Yeah, all those fellas.
Who's that run by?
Well, Simon pays the wages for some of them.
Did you used to get involved in the trapping?
I was running a trap line as well.
You talked about seeing some bats, native bats at the hut.
That was weird. I noted that at Dock they had a thing called a bat monitor. And I thought bat was just a name picked out of thin air for this thing, whatever it did. You know, I checked it out and turned out it was a little device that emits, it doesn't emit anything actually, but it can receive and accentuate the high-pitched squeak of a bat. But the bats have got to be there. And directly opposite the hut And just down from the airstrip was a real big ZK-ATO tree, big one. And one night I got a telly lantern put on the wing of the aeroplane on the top, cranked it up to full noise. While I was waiting there, suddenly started to squeak. Must be something wrong with this. And I looked around, the bat went past.
Wow.
And it orbited the camp 2 or 3 times, just outside the radius of the lamp, which was attracting moths. And then it picked up a friend, and they went and had a nice big circuit round the top of this ZK-ATO on the other side of the strip. And that was great because this bat monitor told you they were there.
Mm.
They're not prolific, but they're around.
Pretty unknown.
Yeah.
And you obviously became a lot more aware of conservation and sort of attitudes during your time up at the camp, did you?
Yeah, I did. Some of the conservationists were a pain on their nether regions because they had lots of theory, but none of them had calluses on their hands. I remember one of them saying to me, 3 young women there, all very attractive, anything with a skirt on when you've been in the bush for a week is gorgeous. But anyway, one of them said to me, the blue ducks have got a white ring round the eye. And I said, yeah. How do you tell which is female and which is male? And I thought it was pretty easy, really, pretty basic. Pick up a big round rock, throw at one of the ducks, and if he squawks indignantly and leaps off where he is at and picks the rock up and throws it back, that's the male. So the other one's obviously female. And they looked at me as if I'd lost all my marbles. I suddenly burst into laughing. That's the most serious one amongst them.
And even the deer started coming back. And you obviously didn't shoot around the camp.
Yeah.
So
well, they're still there.
Mm.
In fact, right now there are 2 guys who took over the trapping from me. And they're up in the camp, and not in my camp, but another one about 5 or 6 kilometres away. And they feed the deer for me.
Right. You actually feed them. What do you feed them?
Maize.
Okay.
Whole maize kernel.
Yeah.
And, they love it.
So they'll come up right close to you?
Well, from here to you, one of them is that close, but they normally feed within the spaces of this hut.
And these are wild deer?
Yeah, wild deer. No fences for miles.
Hinds and stags?
Mostly hinds. Occasional stags. I try and most people are pretty good. The hunters that come, a few hunters that come through on my side of the range, usually call in and say g'day. And
do you have any issues with poaching?
Had one. I leaned over the gate and said, come back again, I'll shoot you bloody dog, so then you'll be next. Get out of here. And that was it. Haven't had any trouble really since.
The last paragraph of your last book, you had been watching a stag roaring right beside the hut. And you wrote this. Back at the hut, I looked at my watch. 2:30 in the morning. Sounds like Charlie. Out across the moonlit river, a moorpork called. Peace reigned again in the Te Hoi. And with a sigh of absolute contentment, I turned towards my bunk. We were winning at last. And another thing you said, the thing I love about this place is the peace. Peace with a capital P.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a great way to end your last book. You know, out of all the funny and humorous hunting and flying stories and the dramas and the sad things, it was all, to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was all about a search for a place where you could be by yourself, contented in the bush. Would that be correct?
Yep.
And to find it like that made for a really happy ending, you know, for us reading your books and obviously for you as well. And you've been in there for now 25 years.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing.
Well, there was a time when I'd come back and tell Ros, but I don't live here, you know. I'd come back and tell her what I'd seen, and I took her up there just for a visit, and she had like 2 cameras, but I'd made a hide for her, and the edge of a clearing, fallen log, but a hollow behind it. I put a plastic chair in there from here, and she'd go there and spend 2 or 3 hours just sitting, watching, and she got some great photos.
So, talking about Ros, this is a friend of yours that you've known for a long time. I found some information on Facebook so she started a trust called the Up Trust.
That's right.
In 2003, and you've been a trustee of that until it closed just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
She works with horses.
Yeah.
And uses horses to try and get through to kids.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Various educational institutions like schools, and sometimes parents would send their kids here. Kids would be anything on the average, say 10, 12, 13, always aggressive and very difficult to manage. And occasionally you get a kid that's so wiped out by the experience of other people that all they do is cower in the corner somewhere and you can't get through to them. Ros would get these kids in here and she'd line them up, tell her what her name was. So I'm Ros, and this is the story. We only have one set of rules, and that is behave yourselves and don't spit on the ground, because my horses have to eat that grass, and if I see you spit, I'll drag you over and plant you in your own spit, and you can lick it up yourselves, all right? Deal? The kids all gave a bit of a nervous chuckle.
Who is this woman?
Yeah. She was great. She used to get in no end of trouble. And even now, after all those years, some of the early clients that came here bring their families in. And still getting referrals from parents or headmasters or whatever. Yeah, to try and bring some hope to the little kids and the parents.
Yeah, great thing to be doing.
Yeah.
And great that you could be helping out for 20 years or more.
Yeah.
So this is Dibs, I think.
This is Dibs.
And this was a Kaimanawa horse?
Yep. He was had a band of mares, I'm told, in the wild, which surprises me because he was only 7, I think, when he was mustered. But he's adapted to domestic life really, really well. Some of them don't so much. I've got 2 wildies down the back that would rather still be wild.
So can you say just a little bit about what the Up Trust did? You ran it for 20 years?
Yep. It grew out of a trekking operation that I started, and we saw people coming to trek who were clearly in need of something more than just going for a little tatars, and it morphed into Up Trust. So we worked with mental health people, adults and children, and then the police started bringing kids and Oranga Tamariki, what was called something else then, and schools. So any marginalised, mainly kids, people sent them out to me, and it wasn't about riding, it was about building relationships through the horses, learning that a horse is a sentient being and they actually have emotions and all the rest of it. And what a horse does is what you give is what you get. So it's like looking at a reflection, your reflection in a mirror. And if the kids moaned and said, oh, my horse is doing such and such, I'd say, who does he remind you of? And they'd say, and they'd realise that what they were being given was what they were doing to other people. So
So what was Charlie's involvement in the trust?
Charlie was very supportive when I...
It was all about you before, now it's about her, so just keep quiet. You can't butt in.
I'm going to encourage you to tell some lies.
Well, no, I'm not going to tell lies. Charlie was very supportive when I was balmy enough to start this up, and was made a trustee. I set it up as a charitable trust, and he was a very strong supporter in the background. And on occasion we'd run holiday programs for the kids, and they were pretty gnarly kids. In fact, the first lot that arrived in police cars, and they came into the yards, and I looked at these kids and thought, what have I done? So when we started taking them out the back into the forest and everything, Charlie would come too, and just to lend a hand. We had one-on-one, and if the kid played up or got abusive, Charlie didn't tolerate it terribly well. And
What a toughie.
yeah,
You closed down in 2023.
something like that.
And there was, at one point you said there was 3 of us founding members left. There's
That's right.
yourself, there's Charlie
And
Tiny
Tiny
Tim, who was a big horse, was he?
He was huge.
Do you have any personal stories from parents or kids of ways you've helped people that you can think of?
Well, yeah, there's heaps of them. I can't always remember them because you tend to remember the bad things. But I remember there was one girl, a secondary school girl, and she just gave me death. Every time she came, she just was awful. She tried every which way to needle me. And one day I said to her, look, I said, there's one thing you can't stop me from doing. And she said, what's that? And I said, you can't stop me from loving you. And she said, oh, you're just paid to say that. And I said, actually, I don't get paid. And from that day, different girl. Because someone loved her enough without saying all the right words, because that was what they were paid to do.
Yeah.
And there was one little girl who was about 5 or 6, and her behaviour was extremely bizarre. And it turned out that she had, when she was a baby, her mother had gone out one day and the father wanted to go out. She was just a few months old. And so he taped her inside a cardboard box and sealed it up and went out. And by the time the mother got home, she was unresponsive, but they brought her round again. And that was the trigger. So when she came out here, she wouldn't use the toilet. At school, she was just hell on wheels. And she used to bark like a dog and do bizarre things. It was very hard to reach her. But anyway, she loved horses. And one day someone sent me a box full of jodhpurs, all sizes. And I went through them and I said, I won't tell you her name, look, these look about your size. And she snatched them out of my hand, ran to the toilet, shut the door and put them on. And that was a turning point, something tiny like that.
So it's all about finding that one wee trigger for each individual.
Yes. And it was like, I always used to see the kids like having a panel on their chest of buttons, and I'd just push a few buttons and nothing would happen.
Yeah.
And then one would go beep, and that was the one I focused on. So every kid had a different trigger.
Oh, well done. I'm sure you made an amazing contribution to a lot of people's lives, and well done to you too. I'm sure you did too. And you had a few horses in the camp as well for a while.
Yeah.
And what did you do? Horse trekking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just during the winter, the summer months, met some really neat people.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Yeah.
Was it overnight treks?
Oh, well, 2 nights normally.
And you would provide everything, food and tour guide and...
I was told by a friend of mine that he said, what are you going to charge them? And I said, I thought about $250 for everything, transport back and forth and food. He said, you idiot, make that $850 and people will come. I said, no, that's no good, because, families, you get little kids, perhaps, and mum and dad that come up.
Yeah. I have a couple of last questions for you. One is about your hate for bureaucracy. It's a clear theme in your books. You just don't have the time for them. In your book, you called a dock bureaucrat, or you described them as a woolly-headed green goon wearing a beard, Roman sandals, and in an 8th-story Wellington office. And in the CAA bureaucrats, you said I'd been well and truly traumatized, homogenized, exercised and ostracized by the bureaucrats, so my tiny brain was conditioned to the mindlessness and odd touch of malevolence.
Yeah.
What was it you hated so much about them?
Oh, they didn't do anything when the Forest Service had vanished and Doc took over. And it was a whole new learning curve. I'd been used to working with guys who knew what they were doing and did it.
Mm-hmm.
And the faster you did it, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly it got down to meetings and discussions and committees. And
that all came about when Doc...
Yeah, well, most of the guys in leadership positions were struggling to stay there, I think. Mm. But they didn't have a clue how it all worked.
That was 30 odd years ago. What do you think of the world these days?
Oh, so I'm waiting for it to end. Can't go on like this.
But the other thing is, in today's world, you can legally fit a V8 into a V8 Rover into an Auster, so it can't be too bad.
Well, out there amongst the great unwashed, there are a lot of people who are free thinkers. And they say, no, stuff it. That guy can do it, I'll do it.
That's true. And lastly, we talked about you becoming a bit of a conservationist at heart over the years.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed it in your books, you know, as I read through them, you were slowly moving from a hunting mindset to a conservation one. Soon after the Protech was up and running, you mentioned photographing deer, which was a bit of a change in a mindset. Just before finding the Hoe Strip, you were philosophizing about the ethics of killing deer. You know, so obviously for someone who has shot so many deer, you're starting to think, well, is this ethical? Or what do you think started that whole process in your mind? And
well, when meat hunting was all the go, and I was a meat hunter, you go out and you'd shoot a deer and you'd process it and bring it back and sell it through the freezer people. And it was done properly, generally. Bit of poaching here and there, I suppose, but I cannot for the life of me see the ethics of going into the bush somewhere, some wild place, and seeing an antler with a deer attached, seeing a beautiful animal, and because it's got an ornament on its head, you kill it and leave the whole body there to rot while you toddle off with usually a fairly poor head anyway. And the way I look at it is if you're hungry, take it. If you're not hungry, admire it.
Makes sense.
That's to me.
What advice would you give to young people who are thinking of taking up hunting, or maybe someone who's grappling with the ethics of it? What would you tell them? Is hunting still okay?
Yeah, it is, particularly to feed the family. But to go out and kill things for fun, not at all.
Thank you very much for talking to me.
Oh,
it's been a real pleasure, a real honour.
Likewise.
Oh, thank you. And I have one last thing to give you. I was talking to Dr. Dave, who used to do your medicals.
Yeah.
I was talking to him yesterday and said I was coming up to see Charlie. And he said, I've got something of Charlie's. So he rummaged them out, and there's these old glasses. And he said, Charlie came in for a medical one day and he was wearing these things. Most of them are made with number 8 wire. And he said, I had to take them off him because they're a hazard. But I've been feeling bad that maybe he needs them. So he said, give these back to Charlie. So there you go. There's a
Thank
present
you.
from Dr. Dave.
Really. He's a good bloke.
He's a great bloke. All right. Thanks, Charlie.
Oh, you're welcome.
Riding the wave. Lift with a capital L for euphoria. The aircraft became rock steady, the engine suddenly not having to do very much at all to keep us flying, relaxed and began to run as sweet as a chocolate Brazil nut. The vertical speed indicator suddenly accelerated from around 500 feet per minute of engine-induced climb to clonk, needle on the stop at 2,000 feet per minute, and we were still going up like a smooth, silent rocket, frantically chased by the altimeter needle which was having to run to keep up. From 4,500 feet to 7, make that 8. Whoops, then goes 9, and we were heading for 10,000 feet so fast and smoothly it was unbelievable. The top of the range at 5,656 feet was shrinking away below us at a surprising rate, and at 11,000 feet we converted the vertical movement of the aircraft to horizontal by closing the throttle and lowering the nose to ride the wave. With engine idling but carb head on, we hooned along at 110 knots, just like a surfie riding his board. Absolute magic. And the only noise was the faint whistle of air over the canopy. South as far as Kiwi Saddle, more than a mile below, and then a long sweeping turn, no power, to go hissing north again, still at around 11,000 feet, but gaining altitude at around 100 to 200 feet per minute. It was some updraft. Riding a wave like this beats dope, parties, and fast racehorses, and the beauty of it is that it's all free. Hawke's Bay and our benevolent rotor cloud were way below, and the view was magnificent. All the central North Island volcanoes were a stone's throw out the window to the west. The sweep of the bay, Mahia Peninsula, Portland Island, and Hong Kong, away to the northeast, and to the south I reckon you could see penguins. It was marvellous, but it was also time to go. So we swung east, crossed over that peaceful-looking but very dangerous long roll of cotton wool way down below with a bit of buffeting, and then we were on the red side of the ledger, going down like a crowbar in smooth air, but heading away from it all with the help of that nice low combing up front. A couple of minutes later we were overhead Patoka, descending through 6,000 feet and estimating Napier at 3.5. It had been a great day.